can tell you guys a secret on how to become internet famous.
Go on.
Kill someone?
Be lazy as fuck. As in, just upload hundreds of videos a day. Literally everything you do, have it direct, like linked to YouTube, and like when you eat in the morning, when you have a shit, when you play 10 minutes of Splunky, just do that. If you swamp the market, there's enough chance that you'll get noticed.
Actually, I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but I wanted to start doing a thing where I play a video game and then I stream like one of you guys with me, and like it's a different person for each video game I play, and I just like we release a few videos a day, and we just do a few series at once. Like I'll record with one person in a day, and then we'll just do that every couple of days, and that'll be like the month's videos. But now I feel like a shameless shill for thinking about doing that.
Oh no, jump on the button.
There's nothing wrong with trying to like create content with frequency. It's just whether that content's good or not. Whether it's like with Game Grumps, for example, they keep putting out videos, but some of their series just stop because clearly they just lost interest in the game. And if you lose interest in the game, then what's the point in playing that particular one?
You know exactly who I was digging at there, but you avoided it. I was on about PewDiePie.
Yeah, I know. Everybody hates PewDiePie, and I don't have the time for it. I don't have the kind of energy it takes to hate PewDiePie.
I don't think anybody really does. It's just you hate him so much, but eventually you run out of hate energy, I guess.
Well, see, that's the thing.
I run out of hate. Go on.
No, go ahead. You say yours first before I get into my rant.
Well, I was going to say, I was looking at DeviantArt recently and just checking through my messages on that, because I'm hoping to get back into drawing and start doing something. But I got invited to a Michael Bay hate club on the site, and I kind of felt really weird in that I don't like Michael Bay's Transformer movies, but I don't really hate the man himself, and I don't really want to spend my time drawing pictures about how much his movies suck compared to the original cartoon. It's a strange kind of mentality to dedicate your time to hating on something that you won't have an effect on in the end of the day.
See, that's actually the big thing that I like to point out. Whenever people are like, "Oh my God, PewDiePie! I hate PewDiePie. Why the fuck does anybody like PewDiePie?" And it's like they like PewDiePie. That's pretty much it. Just don't watch his fucking videos, bro. I mean, because like it was my.
You did not just do that. You did not just do that.
Do what? What I do? What
Mike, fire him. Fucking hurry up. You referred to us as
Did
one
anyone
of
else
all
only give
of
up
his
half of
fans.
that sentence?
Wait, what? What's that, Josh? I didn't catch what you said.
You referred to us as bros. Literally his tagline for referring to people. You are a PewDiePie fan.
Okay, listen. Need I remind you? Okay, so right now, and I'm gonna blow the whistle on Josh right now, but right now he is known as Liquid in our little ventrilo here. But earlier, I believe you went by the term #YOLOSWAGG, G being short for gangsta.
Yep.
So I have a question.
Yeah. Go on then, shoot.
So, who exactly?
How quickly can you run?
Yeah, who exactly the fuck are you?
I'm somebody who can take a joke, which, unlike most of his fans are, because they use the familiar catchphrase. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Oh, okay, by that logic, then is acceptable, because if you don't look at it, then it doesn't exist.
Okay,
No.
there's a difference between there's a difference between PewDiePie
There's a line somewhere.
and
No, there isn't.
see.
They're as bad as each other.
Oh my God. Hang on. No, this. Oh Jesus Christ, Josh. I might have to
No,
take.
seriously, you guys don't understand. It's PewDiePie is the single reason why the content ID match is a thing.
are gonna
Bet I can
fucking
persuade you.
be offended by this.
I think Viacom is probably the reason the Content ID exists.
No. Right. The reason is...
Swiftly moving on.
Yes, please.
No, we're not moving on from this. We're not moving on from this. PewDiePie is the single reason why the Content ID thing's a thing. Because if you go onto YouTube, their top subscribed person is PewDiePie. And what does he do? Video game footage. So clearly he's worth that much that companies can actually see that they're losing quite a lot of money due to him. If anybody's catching my drift.
To be fair to... ignoring previous statements that are of hyperbole for a moment, but when it comes to the developers themselves, a lot of developers are actually very appreciative of YouTubers and Let's Plays. Again, going with the Address the Cess thing, they had the guys on that created Hotline Miami, and expressing how the Let's Plays of that game and the Let's Plays of games like Shadow Warrior probably are the key source of its marketing. And a lot of people wouldn't have known about those games. I wouldn't have bought Shadow Warrior had I not seen that it was available because of Let's Plays. And I love the game, I think it's fantastic, but I would have missed out on that. The thing is, when you watch a game, you're not actually engaging in what a game does, which is playing it, the actual form of medium. Like if a movie's put up on YouTube, then that's the only real way you interact with a movie, by watching it. But with a game, there's this other level where you have to purchase it just to actually experience it. You can't just watch it because, I mean, how many times have you watched a Let's Play and gotten really frustrated at someone doing the wrong thing or something you wouldn't do in a certain situation?
Oh my god, Game Grumps playing Super Metroid.
Before we continue, I'd like to apologise. I think I kind of saw red with that. I think PewDiePie's kind of like... Oh, I'm sorry people.
Because it makes it all better.
Hey, if he's allowed to make 300 videos shouting and me saying one word in the podcast, that, you know, I'm sorry everyone, basically. I'm just gonna hang my head.
At least this is an
Oh,
episode.
yeah, forget about all the terrible jokes he makes. I haven't watched a PewDiePie video in like 2 years, and I'm very happy for that.
Sounds like I'm lucky to have not watched a PewDiePie video. I've seen clips, as in I started watching one and I just got bored and moved on. But looks like I dodged a bullet.
Basically, my whole thing is, I don't watch PewDiePie either, but I defend his right to make videos, which is kind of the whole big, like, YouTube issue we're having here. But I can tell you for a fact that I don't like him, because my girlfriend does. And even with headphones on when she's watching him, all I hear is, "Ah! Ah! 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 Ah!" It's like, shut the fuck up.
I'm a pretty firm believer in the whole, if you don't like it, move on. I mean, I think people are welcome to criticise and vent their anger and disdain for things, otherwise, well, what would we be doing otherwise? But, I think there are a lot of things where... I've seen YouTube videos where I just turn it off halfway through because I just don't care anymore, or they didn't give me the interest to begin with. Sometimes they're Let's Play, sometimes they're actually important videos that I probably should have sat down and watched because I might have learned something, but they were boring. But, you know, that's the nature of YouTube, really.
There was a... Actually, yeah, I kind of like, feel that same way, where it's just like, I don't like this, I'm moving on from this and whatever. But there's a video I watched today where it was actually, I forget what it's called. It's like Defend Your Game or something. It's got the completionist versus the internet, essentially, and they're in like a courtroom, and they're defending... Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the recent one was PlayStation All-Stars.
Well, I ran into one from like a year and a half ago of Metroid Other M, and like the completionist is defending it, and I'm just like, but I still watched it because I was curious to see what he has to say.
I think that's a good way of just like with the recent Nostalgia Critic and Angry Joe crossover for the Man of Steel review. It's a good way to like, get both sides of the argument out there, but also show that just because there's a popular argument against something doesn't mean it's the only argument out there about the product. For example, with or artwork or whatever you want to call it, but with Man of Steel, for example, I really like Man of Steel, but I get a lot of the criticism for it, but I don't understand a lot of the anger for it, which is, I guess I don't understand a lot of the anger for anything these days, but it's just, a lot of games come out and they have this huge backlash against them because they're not necessarily as good as a previous one, or they're different, or they star Raiden or something, and eventually there will be people that come out to defend the game because the game might not necessarily be as bad as people say, but they're pissed off at some other reason. Like with Metroid Other M, it's the story, not necessarily the gameplay, and there are a lot of people who don't give a shit about story and just want the gameplay.
See, yeah, that was the thing about Metroid Other M, because the arguments that were made were all things I already knew. Like, the internet, the guy that represented the internet was like, you know, it's a very misogynistic game where we take this powerful bounty hunter and all of a sudden she listens to this fatherly figure, you know, and then the argument to that was like, well, that's just the way they did the theming of the game, because, you know, the game is basically getting stronger by receiving upgrades and power-ups for your suit, which Samus already had by the established story, so they had to figure out a way to make it so, okay, she can't use these things until she hits certain plot points in the game. And it's like, I understand that, but you really can't excuse the method you use to reach that theme with the fact that it needed that theme. I mean, they could have been more creative with that.
Maybe, but I think it's one of those, it's a situation where they don't have this problem with Zelda because they just reboot the storyline each game. Each game is a different Link and a different Zelda and the same Ganon, I guess. But with Metroid, that's not the case, and instead of just making a game where you've got all your powers from the get-go and building from there, or just making a game out of all of them in tandem, they just keep doing the same formula as Zelda, but without any real good context to keep it going.
Well, see, through the first 3 games, it didn't actually need content. It was like, you went through the regular Metroid, you got a bunch of upgrades, and then, like, they took it a step further with the remake, too. In the remake, you lose your suit, and you have to go through, like, a stealth mission, which is really awful, but we're not getting into that. And then you get, like, this new upgraded, like, you know, ancient Shozo suit that's even more powerful. It's basically like the equivalent of the endgame Super Nintendo suit. And then you go into Metroid 2, where I can't remember how that works. I think you still have your upgrades from the first game, but you just go through and get more. And then Super Metroid doesn't even give a shit. It just starts right from scratch, you know. But that's like the best game in the whole series. But then I think the best one that handled that was Metroid Fusion, the next game in the series, which, you know, anybody wants to say, oh, the series was dying. But no, Metroid Fusion was basically what happened was, your suit and you were infected by a parasite, and parts of the suit had to be, you know, surgically removed. So it wasn't the same suit with the same abilities. So you had to get, you know, those abilities again, which I thought they actually addressed at one time, and it worked really well.
I would say, though, that with the Prime series having been out as well, they just basically did the whole you trip over a rock and you lose all your power-ups thing every game. But although I haven't played 3, so I will hold off on that one. But I think that the other issue might be that it's Ninja Theory that made that game. And while they're famous for sexy women, they're not necessarily famous for women that are in positions of subordinates to men. Like, pretty much all of its female cast are independent, strong, and one of them's pretty much the ruler of a clan or whatever. But they're not storytellers. They've never been storytellers, and every time they try, it fails badly. And I think that might have been Nintendo's biggest mistake in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the Metroid series isn't exactly known for being story heavy. Like, the background's pretty muddy, you know, it's open, and all you really know is that Samus is an orphan, her parents were killed by the space pirates, she was raised by the Chozo, she has Chozo blood, and that is why she can use this, you know, this power suit that nobody else has. And why she can use the random upgrades that are held by the Chozo statues, because it's Chozo technology and she's of Chozo blood.
And not to end the argument itself a bit, but we have digressed quite wildly.
That's new?
So we could keep talking about Metroid or Nintendo or something.
I was actually just about to mention how Nintendo, things tend to not go their way when they put out their licenses to other companies, you know, all the way back to the Philips CDI when they let them make Mario and Zelda games. And then sort of more recently when they let Rare make Star Fox Adventures, and then they turned it over to Namco and made Star Fox Assault. I liked Adventures somewhat. Of course, it was not a good Star Fox game. It was an okay game in its own right. And then Star Fox Assault was sort of a train wreck.
I never played Assault, but I think the problem with Star Fox Adventures itself was that there were two lots of fans that were looking forward to this next game, and it wasn't what either of them wanted. Like, I wasn't really big on Star Fox back in the Nintendo 64 days because I missed that ship, but I was a Rare fan and I was really looking forward to Dinosaur Planet, and then suddenly it was a Star Fox game, and it was kind of weird. But I liked the Star Fox theme, I liked Fox McCloud in Smash Brothers, so I waited to see, but it felt really forced, and like it was going to be a much better game when it was on the Nintendo 64 than we ended up with. But at the same time, with Nintendo licensing their stuff, they have had successes as well with Rare, as an example with Donkey Kong, Retro with Donkey Kong and Metroid, and more recently, well not more recently, but sort of in the middle, Sega with F-Zero. So they've had a bit of a mixed bag, really.
I still think it's hilarious that Rare were the ones that made Time Lord.
It's funny how Rare has made a lot of sort of retro games, and you don't realize, like when they made Battletoads.
Yeah, a lot of people think they existed between just Killer Instinct's Donkey Kong Country and then GoldenEye, and that's about it.
I hate that the whole debacle with Star Fox Adventures is what ultimately made Rare leave. Because it was originally going to be Dinosaur Planet on the N64, and then Nintendo said, "Oh, make it for the GameCube. You know, here's some more, make it look prettier and all that stuff." And then, from what I hear, they were afraid of, because it was supposed to be a launch title. They didn't have a whole lot of launch titles, first-party launch titles with their IPs, so they made it a Star Fox game, and that pissed Rare off. And that's ultimately why they sided with Microsoft, and, you know, look where Rare is now. They're making Kinect Sports.
The Rare that's there now is not the Rare that was there when they joined. From what I understand, a lot of the people, or at least certain members of the talent, left and are currently working with Retro or doing other things. But yeah, Microsoft, what Nintendo did to them was probably nowhere near as bad as what Microsoft did to them.
Yeah, the people who left Rare, they're actually working on a successor to Banjo-Tooie. I forget what they haven't came up with a name of it. They just call it the successor of Banjo. It's in like a code name right now.
So it wouldn't be Banjo 3.
No, because Microsoft holds the Banjo IP, and they can't get it from them. Because, you know, Microsoft, they have big plans for that, I guess.
Microsoft are the new EA, basically.
I think you could make the argument that EA is the new Microsoft.
I think you could make the argument that Microsoft was just shit and had a moment where it was looking hopeful, and then things just went really wrong.
Because, see, EA's been on a tear for a very long time. Like, you know Fallout?
Yes.
Is that an indie game? I've never heard of it.
I think it's a platformer from 1982.
Oh, for fuck's sake. But anyway, Fallout was supposed to originally be a sequel to a game called Wasteland. And I'm sure you know what Wasteland is.
Oh yeah, the sequel to that finally just came out. Need to play it.
Oh, did it come out?
I think it's in the pre-alpha thing that you can get in on Steam, early access. I think it's there.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that Fallout was supposed to be a sequel to Wasteland initially, but because the developers who made Wasteland were the ones working on Fallout, but they couldn't get the rights because guess who was the publisher of Wasteland?
Nintendo.
Todd McFarlane.
Electronic Arts. This runs back to the fucking 80s, yo. Back 80s and 90s, yo.
This shit goes deeper than you could possibly imagine.
Well, they kind of screwed over Peter Molyneux back in the day when he was making games everyone liked.
Man, I don't think I can even remember that time.
Theme Park, Theme Hospital, Populous, Dungeon Keeper, Dungeon Keeper 2. He was really big on the sort of sim games before The Sims, I guess. But I guess themed sim style games. But the EA bought the company Bullfrog and kind of just ruined them. He ended up leaving and forming Lionhead. They ended up with Microsoft. Which, I would argue, any complaints about Fable... okay, not any complaints, but a lot of complaints about Fable might also have something to do with Microsoft as well, as Peter Molyneux.
Well, I mean, it's common knowledge that a lot of it comes down to Peter Molyneux just has this really grand but simultaneously completely unattainable vision, and by the time it's watered down to something that can feasibly be made, it's just not. It's kind of mediocre at best, really.
That, and basically they kind of... Microsoft had sort of turned Lionhead into the Fable studio when they did have other ideas they wanted to work on that ultimately got canned.
See, I think, shit. Oh, I think Peter Molyneux, it's mainly his fault that causes a lot of problems, too. Because he's got to tell everybody and their mother about how all the ideas he has and how it's going to be so great. Like, do you guys remember Wolfenstein 3D?
Yes.
Yes.
In Wolfenstein 3D, they originally wanted you to be able to, like, knock out guards and take their clothes and, like, all these crazy features. But guess what? You didn't hear a goddamn thing about them until, like, 10 years after the game was made. You know why? Because they know how much it would suck if they said all these things that it turns out they can't do, and the game came out without them. So they're like, oh, hey, the game's out, it's a huge success. Hey, by the way, here's some things we wanted to do, but we couldn't, you know? See, old school gaming, like, knew how to do it, you know?
I think part of the problem is also overestimating what the next lot of technologies is capable of. Like, it's possible that with where the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are going, and the way online gaming is going, a game like Fable might be feasible. But because of Fable's history, no one will want to do it with Fable. It's more likely to happen with The Witcher or Assassin's Creed, because they're long-standing open-world fantasy franchises.
And I often feel like technology and actual innovation are sometimes inverse in video games, if only because technological limitations force developers in early days to compensate, with things like imagination and innovative gameplay and thinking outside the box. Whereas today, we have the technology to really make anything you can conceive come to life, and you give somebody that sort of capabilities, and more often than not, I think their creativity is going to suffer for it.
Yeah, I've said many times amongst friends that I feel like while technology has increased, the scope has decreased. A lot of the games of the past had some really grand ideas and things that just couldn't really clearly be represented outside of pixels. And you just need to look at the cover art of some games to see how fantastical they looked. But then you reach modern day and a lot of it's just running down corridors shooting generic bad guys. We can have that stuff happen in a game like Mass Effect with this grand idea, but the gameplay is just running down corridors still.
Yeah, I gotta give credit to Ubisoft for actually delaying Watch Dogs, because some of the stuff that they had already announced wasn't working. They could have very easily taken it out and said, oh, well, we already said it, but it doesn't matter. But they're actually delaying it to try to fix those problems. As much crap as Ubisoft has kind of gotten in recent years, it's actually good that they decided to delay it and try to fix their game and not release it broken.
Ubisoft are an interesting one because they are, in some ways, the worst company in the universe, but they put out some of the best games as well. At least by current standards anyway. So to a certain extent I give them a pass on a lot of the shit they do, because they still make games I like every now and then, like Far Cry 3. But they still don't make games I want, like Beyond Good and Evil 2.
And Buck Bumble 2.
It seems really strange as well at times where, like I'd probably say the key example from the last generation, you had games like Mass Effect, which were space-based, and Halo, which was space-based, but you kind of felt like you were very grounded and very much on Earth throughout the whole thing. But then you go to the Wii, which was technically underpowered, and play Mario Galaxy, and you are soaring through the stars, and you're on weird gravity-defying planets, and all these sort of spectacular ideas realised in what is technologically a worse game.
Yeah, that's what I'm really finding that I like and appreciate more and more about Nintendo these days, is that they're the only company that still seems to remember that their primary function is making games. If you look at like the Xbox One and the PS3, they're not so much advertised as a great video game experience. They're advertised as these great multimedia experiences. Like the Xbox One's supposed to be the one entertainment appliance that you really need. It's like, well, that's not what I need. Can you please just focus on making like fun games?
But on that note, the Wii U's only got like 2 games. I mean, Nintendo have even published an apology saying that the Wii U's got literally no games.
I don't think that's fair anymore. I mean, it just released a new 3D Mario, they released the Wind Waker HD, Wonderful 101, Mario Kart's just around the corner, so Smash Brothers, Bayonetta 2's on the way. It's got a lot more traction than people want to admit, and I think a lot of it does come down to whether people want to admit it. It was going to have a lot of developers on board at launch, which is why they didn't put out as many games. And then suddenly they just all dropped from the system and left Nintendo dry.
But Nintendo have always been like that. If you took Mario, Metroid and Zelda away from Nintendo consoles, you really haven't got anything that they've released in the past 5 years, except for No More Heroes. Actually, I like that game.
Well, they're the ones releasing Bayonetta, which is kind of in their favour. But it goes back to the whole... Nintendo have struggled with third parties since the SNES era because they pissed off a lot of them. And most of them went to Sony. and it kind of stayed that way pretty much until now. Until the Wii, when everyone tried to do what the Wii did, but no one really knew what they wanted to do with the Wii.
I honestly think that might actually be the one downfall with the Wii U, is a lot of the great IPs that started on the Nintendo have strayed far, far away from it, like the Castlevania franchise, and
Final Fantasy, Mega Man.
Oh yeah. Final Fantasy and Mega Man, definitely. It's just those games that started on the Nintendo, and so, like there was a time where if you had a Super Nintendo, any game made by Enix and you were golden, and there was like 1,000 of them, so you were just good to go with the Super Nintendo if you liked RPGs or action RPGs or something like that.
If you wanted Capcom games as well, it's like pretty much everything. If it wasn't released on both systems, it was going to be an NES or SNES exclusive. Games like DuckTales, for example. I mean, that's famous for its NES version, and there were lots of Capcom Disney games after that were on both systems at the time, but the Nintendo ones are more famous.
I think that's kind of the saddest aspect of Nintendo, though, because it's like with this console, you look at all the press that surrounded the 8th generation, and I did a video about this where I tried to be pretty thorough about it, but it just really felt like the 8th generation of gaming wasn't even about gaming anymore. It was about social interactivity, social connectivity, sharing, things like that. It wasn't even so much about the games. But the Wii U feels like it's more game-oriented than any of the other consoles, but it doesn't have many games. So whenever they're like, well, okay, we're going to be... And even the original Wii, no matter how garbage that was, it was more... The gimmick was more about the games and how you play the games, while everything else was like, well, here's Xbox Live, and here's the PlayStation Network, and they just put more emphasis on... being able to talk to people while you're playing. And now they're emphasizing watching TV while you play and shit like that. And it's just, they're losing sight while Nintendo's like, we're still about the games, bruh. And it's just that they're too little too late, really.